Good afternoon, everybody. This is Zoe Bywater from Belvoir, and I'm here today with Mike Stratton. We're just going to have a little bit of a chat about how things are going to change once the courts reopen. So, good afternoon, Mike. How are you today?
Yeah, good afternoon to you, Zoe. It's good to see you.
Yeah, in weirdest circumstances that we've got here at the minute. This is like everybody's zoomed out now, I think. Obviously, Mike works for a company called Tenant, and he calls himself the Eviction Specialist. So clearly, with the courts reopening, it might be prudent to speak to someone in the know about how things have changed. Before we do, though, how things been over the last few months for your company and yourself in terms of lockdown and dealing with issues
I think
and whatnot?
I think the way to put it, Zoe, is frustrating because we've got cases that have gone on before the lockdown. You know, then when it happened, the courts closed and we had 90-day notices. Everything it's like working in treacle because you're trying to help people. So the word I'd use is frustrating.
Yeah. And obviously, we came as an industry, we came out of lockdown probably around I think it was about the 13th of May. Since then, have you had a lot of people getting in touch with you about, what happens now? Or is it just over recent weeks you've found that?
It's it's right from the beginning of lockdown. The phone calls started to come through, inquiries, just to say, what do we do? You know, how are we going to operate? How are we going to survive as a landlord? So that happened literally as lockdown went on, and then continued. And the last 2 weeks now have just been a constant flow. And a lot of it is just giving people information. A lot of it is just letting people know where they stand, what they can do. But I've got the frustration part is that the landlords are owed money, and they don't see a way forward. That's the real issue for them.
What sort of the key questions that they've been asking then over the sort of recent weeks? Is there sort of, if you like the top three questions that you get asked over and over, what would you say those are?
The first one is the tenant's not paying. How can I get my money back? Who's going to pay? The second one always is how long is it going to take? And the third one is what can I do legally without overstepping the mark? So those three questions are in people's minds.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know whether the sort of the majority of the people that you deal with are what are called self-managing landlords or the landlords with agents. But I mean, we've been really, really lucky as an agency that we've probably not seen that much of an increase in rent arrears. And really, our tenants have been really good in terms of keeping the rent flowing, per se. Are you finding it's a good mixture of self-managing landlords and agents, or who would
It's
you say is
mainly
coming
self-managed. Yeah, mainly self-managed. So I think this whole instance has highlighted the work that letting agents do, how they help people, how they keep the arrears low because it's your job to keep on top of that. And then the soft soap stories that you hear, whilst you're compassionate, you're a third party, and you deal with it in a different manner. So most of our inquiries are coming from self-let landlords. A very small minority are coming from letting agents, but they're putting me on to people who are, again, self-managing. They've used the tenant fine system, and now they've hit issues. So that's a very interesting observation, Zoe.
Yeah. Do you find that the landlords don't have any protection as well in terms of like rent, the rent and legal insurances that are out there? Would you say a lot of them haven't taken that out? And that's obviously why it's much more painful for them because they've not got that sort of to fall back on.
I absolutely. I think that the agents that have pushed the legal protection, rent and legal protection in the past, they've reaped the benefits. And as we all know, the policy's changed. But the landlords without any protection, they're very exposed. And I can foresee, and this is a personal view. I mean, we supply rent and legal protection, but on a personal view is that I am very surprised that if people have got a buy-to-let mortgage, it is not part of the mortgage system to have some form of protection to cover this sort of eventuality.
Yeah. So what you effectively mean is something like buildings and contents insurance, but it's taking it to the next level where they should have the additional protection if the tenant defaults on the rent. I mean, it protects everybody really if the tenant falls on hard times, which potentially could happen come October. So that's a good idea, but I don't know how we would get mortgage companies on board with that. That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think that the whole point, though, Zoe, is I'm a landlord, and so I look at something, I look at the risk, and most landlords can afford a 2-month void. So I build in my business plan, a 2-month void, 3 months, I'm hitting trouble. So my insurances, are something that I build into my plan. So yes, a lot of people have not got insurance.
Okay. So for obviously anybody out there at the moment that's not sure what's going to happen, we're obviously clear now that the courts are going to reopen on the 24th of August. But if you've got a case in the pipeline of the 62,000 cases that are stayed at the minute, what should they be doing, or what should landlords be thinking about doing now if they are going to progress with possession?
Okay, well, first off, what I'm advising everybody, because the inquiries are coming through now saying, well, our tenant hasn't paid so take it back a step. Our tenants haven't paid for the last 2.5, 3 months now. What can we do? And my advice is get in the system, because if you're running late, at the moment we're still on a 90-day notice, so you're going to be behind all the way. If you've got a case running, the court have issued, the government have issued out the guidelines for going forward. And the guidelines are that you have to reintroduce that case, and it has to be done in writing. It has to be put forward there, because they're trying to prioritise the cases and trying to get that through. But it's looking up and following the guidelines that the courts are giving out.
So realistically, if you're a landlord and you submitted, or your agent served the notice during lockdown, you're not going to get a phone call from the court saying it's your turn next, mate. You're going to have to instigate things. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And I think the point then, because it's what we do for a living, and so automatically we've done the work behind the scenes. But a lot of people have already got a case sitting there, maybe a Section 8 that's rolling forward. And the court will not just contact them and say, you're still going to be active on here. Yeah. It's the reverse, to then tell the court that you wish to proceed with this case. There are certain things you need to do, such as putting the arrears in writing, so document it down, so they can see. What the courts have come out and said is initially they're going to look at any abuse, any eviction that involve an abuse side with the tenants. They're going to try and prioritise that. Whether that'll happen, we don't know.
Right. Okay. And obviously, one of the things that we need to make people out there aware of is that certain notices have a lifespan, don't they? So if you'd served a notice maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and you potentially could be waiting 3 or 4 months, that notice could expire. Is that right?
It is, absolutely, Zoe. I think from that point, the 6-month rule. So when you're serving a notice and it runs through, you have 6 months for that to expire, and a lot of those have now gone. So what we've done is reissue those notices so that they're staying live, they're current. If the circumstances change, we take care of that at the same time. But no, people have got to be aware. They've got to look now when they issued that notice, and whether that 6-month notice is now expired.
All right. If we, if I was a landlord now and I'd done all of this sort of during lockdown, pre-lockdown, or whatever, and I was really worried, as a company, would Tenant Serve pick that case up, even though you've not dealt with it from the beginning? Are you still able to help people in terms of dealing with the situation now?
Yeah, so that often happens where someone's own circumstance changed and they don't feel they can proceed with that, or they want to take some professional advice and let somebody else take that forward. And of course we do. We take every case on its own merit. We do a case overview right from the beginning anyway, and we do that as it rolled on. to make sure that they're up to speed, etc. So if someone wants advice, contact me, contact us, tenant serve, and we'll talk to them anyway about the circumstance.
Okay, so that's ongoing cases. So if, for instance, something happens now or in the future as the courts are reopening, is there certain things that are different now that we have to do differently? Is there any special letters that we have to write, or is there anything we need to do that we wouldn't have necessarily done pre-COVID?
Yes, there is. It's ensuring that the people that are applying, that you've attained that they are within the COVID rules, so they're protected if they're the hardship is through the COVID lockdown. It's talking, it's communication, it's also you want to document everything that's said, so that if you're sending some letters out, just duplicate them, just put them into your system. But a private landlord conversation, really, I say just keep a note of it. When you talk to them. So if they're saying that it's ask for some proof, ask to talk, ask to open up a dialogue with them, and the courts are now looking at that, and they're going to want proof that that they're safe.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere, isn't there, that you've got to now explain the impact of the pandemic and the reasons why you need possession of this property, and that if you fail to do that, is it right that a court could adjourn the case because they've not been provided?
If they haven't got. Absolutely, but it's not set down what questions you need to ask. It's not black and white. So that's why I was saying, it's document down. So if you're talking to that tenant, you want to be compassionate anyway, because none of them knows what circumstance they're in. But it's talking them through, and then a lot of people, the tenants that aren't paying, are just ignoring what's going on. And of course, that's the worst thing ever, because when you've got a tenant not replying to you, what do you do? So therefore, you do all your background. You make sure that you've documented contacting them, etc. And the courts are looking at that. So whether they're going to suspend, I don't know, is the honest answer really. But it's highly likely they will look at cases that have been investigated properly.
Right. In your opinion, then, considering the number of cases that have been put on the back burner and cases that potentially might be coming, and if we go even forward into the future, how many more there might be? I don't know how long's a piece of string, but have you got any idea roughly how long this might take to get back to normal in terms of? I mean, there's always been a backlog of court cases, but this is obviously just going to be massive now. Realistically, do you know? I mean,
I think that's going to be regions.
Sorry.
And I was just saying, I think that's going to be region to region, because always before we had cases in London that were taking up to 2.5 months, 3 months. But down in St Albans, we've done one in 3 weeks. So there's always that disparity. What the government have come out and said is they're going to be doing some that's called Nightingale courts. So they're going to be put together courts. They're making them operate, and they're going to be from old buildings, etc. And I've got a little list here. So it's Telford, Stevenage, Swansea, Middlesbrough, Chichester, Peterborough, and London. They're opening these up to try and get rid of the backlog. So if that works, and nothing is there's not another intervention, I'm an optimist, and I think it's going to be next February, March, by the time that's going to be through. And then we'll be back to, brackets normal, and then maybe it'll be a two month delay running from there. But it really isn't a lap of the gods, because we've only got to have another lockdown local. If supposing they've opened one of these up somewhere, Nightingale called up, and there's a local lockdown, then we're back to square one again. So I think it's good to be able to talk about it, but I think, and without frightening landlords, I do think it's going to be a long time.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of these Nightingale courts, who makes the decision which cases go to those? Is this about the prioritising cases and then the high priority ones will go there, or will it be like a postcode lottery, do you think?
No, they're saying that they're going to prioritise, and here we are, they're going to prioritise domestic abuse and antisocial behaviour cases first.
Right.
So if there's something involved there, so let's just say a Section 8 that involves antisocial behaviour, where you've got an HMO and one of the people there is causing issues, I think that is the cases they're gonna prioritise.
Yeah. It's going to take time to just prioritise the cases, though, isn't it? You know, regardless of actually doing the court case, if someone's going to have to sit there and sift through all these cases and work that out. I mean, that's in itself a bit of a task, I would have thought.
But I'm smiling this end, Zoe, because the courts aren't exactly fast. You know, they're not. They work at their own speed. You know, and I think with the greatest respect to them, they're going to have a job out, but they should bring in more extra staff. We don't know. This is the point. The government aren't. They're not telling us what they're doing. So if they had the extra staff there, if they have a priority system where they can go through, for me, the priority is the people that were involved with rent arrears from before the lockdown. So, you know, we're looking way back, and those people, those tenants are still in those properties, still not paying rent, still owing money, and the landlord, you know, he's got a mortgage to pay, you know, maybe a buy-to-let mortgage there, and they're the ones that really need the help, you know, because we're talking amounts of money here.
Yeah. I mean, if you know, if you were in that situation as a landlord now, what do you think the best advice would be? Do you think, because obviously clearly for me it looks like, you know, the government and the courts would rather people weren't in this situation, but sometimes, like you say, with antisocial behaviour, etc., it's unavoidable. But what sort of advice would you be giving to landlords that maybe are in this situation? Would you say to sort of just leave it a bit for a while and see how it goes, or would you sort of press on with your court case?
If it was me, I'd be pushing, because, you know, we're not charities. What people forget is the private rental sector. It's not a charity. If it was a charity, you know, we'd have some other income you know, from other sources, but we're not. And I think that's the point. You've got to protect your own interest, and it's a business. And if you've got people in there that, for whatever reason, you know, maybe it's, you know, if it's antisocial or anything at all, they're causing your other tenants issues. You've got to press on. You've got to sort it. You've got to go forward. And I'm saying be patient, but there's a lot of impatience out there now. Patience is running out.
Yeah, and obviously you're there to help with that sort of side of things if need be. And we'll stick your contact details on the bottom of this when we're done. In terms of the rumours that I've heard flying around the industry at the minute, obviously Wales and Scotland both now have either kept the courts closed for longer or extended the notice periods. Do you think that England are going to follow suit, or do you think we're all right?
Well, you don't know. I think there's politics at play here. Call me a cynic, but Wales led the way. You know, they started it. Scotland, you know, Sturgeon saying that they're going to go along now for a 6 months halt. And if Boris is anything like I think he is, and I think the politics are coming into play, we won't follow suit. That's my opinion. But if we do, then it's a game changer again. You know, we're going with some clocks back again. So my own opinion is I don't, you know, I hope the UK government won't do that.
Okay. And then just obviously we've covered the courts. One of the things, I don't know if this is on your mind, or it's been on mine recently, obviously with the furlough scheme ending in October, you know, there's talk now that there could be millions of unemployed individuals out there, which obviously a percentage are going to be in rented and potentially, sadly, may not be able to afford to pay their rent. If you were advising landlords now what action they should be taking to protect their interests, what would you be suggesting?
That's quite interesting, because obviously I have a vested interest, you know, in going the legal route, because it's our business. But my advice is, as a landlord myself and as a human being, is talk to people. You know, it's where you guys come in. You know, I know that you know, your letting agents have advocated that all the way down the line, but you do need communication, because the worst thing ever, a tenant says nothing, they lose their job and they don't notify anybody that you know you can help. Is tell somebody, talk to us about it. You know, if you're worried about it, if a tenant is sitting on my property and they're worried, talk to me, because at the end of the day, we are human beings and we can help. So my advice is always communicate first, and keep pushing, keep trying.
Yeah. Just on that though, I know, like I say, you might have a vested interest in this. Would you consider as a landlord taking out some form of protection? I know that premiums have risen because of COVID, and it's, you're on average, you're costing probably a landlord £100 a year now to take these policies out. But do you think in the long run that might be something that they might want to consider, just as a fallback in case it all goes pear-shaped in October?
I think you're right. I think we've got to follow. If you look at the car manufacturers, right, they're offering their cars with a COVID indemnity. So they've got an insurance policy that they're offering, that they're taking out. So if you're going on finance for buying a new car, you're getting cover. And if you take the lead from there, we're no different. We've got people in property that anything can happen. So looking backwards, we should have had it in the first place to cover eventualities. But going forward, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer, because the money, yes, you've got to spend money out, but you've got to sleep at night, because otherwise you're going to worry. And I think it's the way forward for an insurance policy to cover the non-payment of rent.
Right. Right, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I'm a landlord as well, and it's one of the things. It's always about managing the risk, and if you think the closer we get to October, the higher that risk is going to be. All right, it might cost more, but at the moment, as you well know, insurance companies are still offering these products, but you might get nearer to the time, and they might pull them again, which they did as we hit lockdown. So I don't know about you, but I think if you're a landlord out there, you should be looking at doing it now, sooner rather than later. I think so. You're protecting yourself. Or, like you said, it's going to be a cost, but we know for a fact, you and I both know, it costs £355 just to get a court hearing for a possession order, and that's irrespective of any rent arrears or bailiffs or any damage that potentially could happen to the property. So it might seem like a lot, but in the scheme of things, it's probably a drop in the ocean.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Zoe. I think I always try and find good in everything. There's always a positiveness out of something that's gone on. And I think just us talking about the insurances is a really good thing, because when I'm down and I cover a huge area, and when I'm talking to landlord groups, I go for networking events, etc. The amount of people that say, "Oh no, I've never needed it," "Oh no, I haven't had a tenant that I've had to evict," and I think that is the side that you really have to then, they've got to weigh up. They've got to really start to think the risks now are much higher. But yes, the costs have gone up for the involvement, but it still means that you're covering your business, and I think the fact it hasn't happened to you before, things are changing. So I think from a positive point of view, Zoe, I think it's really good that we're talking about it. There's some excellent policies, not just ours, yours. There's excellent policies around, and I think sometimes it's just people saying, "Well, hang on, what does it involve? What do I get for my money?" And you and I, we can let them know what's available. People have got to do their due diligence now.
All right. Well, it's been brilliant chatting to you. Is there anything else you want to have a sort of mention while we're talking about this exciting subject or this cheerful topic of conversation that we've not mentioned that you think might be useful for anybody listening?
I think if what I would always say to a private landlord, if you have issues, pick the phone up. Talk to professional people, talk to others, talk to you, talk to me. Just to get a guideline on what's going on. Go online and look at the government guidelines. But overall is communication. I'm going to leave you with that thought, Dave. It's just communication with your tenants, with your letting agent, anybody involved, but keep that going.
Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
That's been good.